The storm intensifies, sealing Chateau Montenoir in a white tomb as shadows whisper secrets long buried. Grab a cup of tea, take a seat, and dive deeper into the whispered network, Poirot and the killer no one saw. If you're hooked, subscribe now. Your support means the world to us. And tell us in the comments where you're watching from. Chapter 1. The Night the Lights Went Out, Forever. Snow lashes against the tall windows of Chateau Montenoir, high in the Swiss Alps. December 1937. The world is holding its breath before war, but inside this isolated castle, 15 of Europe's richest and most powerful guests have gathered for a private New Year's retreat, hosted by the reclusive billionaire Armand Valois. Among them sits a small man with an enormous mustache, impeccably dressed, sipping tisane from a porcelain cup. Hercule Poirot has accepted the invitation only because his old friend, Inspector Hercule Poirot of the Sûreté, begged him to come. "Something feels wrong," Jules whispered on the telephone, "but I cannot say what." At exactly 11 minutes past midnight, the lights flicker once, twice, then die, plunging the entire chateau into total blackness. Generators fail, telephones go dead. The storm has cut every connection to the outside world. When emergency lamps finally glow 37 seconds later, Armand Valois is slumped in his velvet armchair in the library, a thin stiletto dagger buried to the hilt in his heart. Yet every door and window remains locked from the inside. The 16 guests plus Poirot were together in the grand salon playing cards. Not one person left the room. No footprints in the fresh snow outside. No sign of any intruder. The perfect, impossible murder. Poirot stands slowly, his gray cells already spinning. He walks to the body, nails and notices something that makes his mustache bristle. The dagger is warm, almost hot to the touch, though the room is freezing, and Valois has been dead at least 5 minutes. He looks up at the terrified faces around him, bankers, politicians, a famous actress, a cardinal, 2 rival spies, and says in his calm Belgian accent, "My friends, we are trapped in this house with a killer who was never here, and yet who has struck with surgical precision. The murder has already happened, but I tell you this, the true horror is only beginning." Because on the dead man's desk lies an open leather notebook, and on the first page, in fresh red ink, someone has written 15 names, the exact 15 guests, plus Poirot himself. Each name has a small neat check mark beside it, except one. The last name, Hercule Poirot, has no mark. A woman screams, the cardinal crosses himself, and somewhere deep in the chateau, a clock strikes 1. Poirot closes the notebook gently and announces, "Tonight, ladies and gentlemen, we play a different game. Someone among us belongs to the Whisper Network, the most secret assassination circle in Europe. They kill without being seen, without leaving a trace, and they never fail twice." The storm howls louder, snow seals every exit, and the little detective feels for the first time in his life the cold breath of fear on his neck, because the killer no one saw has already chosen the second victim. And the second victim is him. Chapter 2 coming next, where Poirot discovers the first whisper, but for now, sleep well, if you can.
Chapter 2. The First Whisper. A single whisper echoes through the vents. Poirot freezes. It's coming from inside the walls. The grandfather clock chimes 2 in the morning, and the guests huddle in the library around Armand's body, the air thick with fear and cigar smoke. Inspector Jules Poirot paces nervously, his face pale under the lantern light. Hercule Poirot, however, sits calmly in a wingback chair, legs crossed, eyes half closed, as if meditating, but his mind races like a Swiss watch. He has seen impossible murders before, the locked room, the poisoned chalice, the bullet from nowhere. But this is different. The dagger still warm, the notebook with the checked names, the Whisper Network, a name that even Jules only whispers in terror. "Let me explain the Whisper Network to you, mes amis," Poirot says, opening his eyes, his voice steady as he addresses the trembling group. It began in the shadows of the Great War, a circle of assassins so perfect they leave no trace, no body, no weapon, no witness, only silence. They communicate by whispers, coded messages passed through loyal servants, hidden compartments, even the wind itself. Their signature is the checkmark beside each name when the victim falls. The actress, Lady Evelyn Hart, gasps, her diamond necklace trembling. "I heard rumors in Monte Carlo. They say the network never misses, never fails. But why Armand? Why us?" Poirot taps the notebook. "Excellent question, madame. Because Armand Valois was not just rich. He was the banker to kings, the man who funded half the spies in Europe. And rumor says he discovered the network's true leader, someone in this very room." Murmurs erupt. The banker Henri Duval protests, "Absurd, I barely knew the man." And the cardinal, Father Lucien, mutters, "Blasphemy, God sees all sins." Poirot rises and circles the room, his cane tapping softly on the Persian rug. "Silence, please. Now we search every guest, every pocket, every secret, because the second checkmark will appear tonight." They begin the search. Women clutch their pearls, men empty cufflinks, but Poirot focuses on the walls, the ornate paneling, the crystal chandelier above. He presses his ear to a carved wooden rosebud and hears it again, a faint hiss like breath. He signals Jules, who brings a heavy poker. They pry open the panel, and inside, a narrow tube of polished brass snakes through the stone, an acoustic whisper tube, old but perfect for carrying voices from room to room. "The network is here," Poirot announces, "and they have been listening to every word we say." Panic rises, but Poirot holds up a hand. "Patience now. We turn their weapon against them." He speaks directly into the tube. "Hello, Whisper Network. Can you hear me? Hercule Poirot is waiting." Silence. Then a reply, faint but clear. "We hear you, little detective, and we see you too." The guests scream and back away, but Poirot smiles coldly. "Excellent. Now we have contact." He turns to the group and assigns tasks. "You, Madame Hart, search the east wing. You, Duval, the kitchens. Father, check the chapel. Everyone report anything unusual, a moved vase, a dropped glove, a single footprint." As they scatter, Poirot pulls Jules aside. "Mon ami, the dagger was worn because it was heated in the fireplace embers, then plunged instantly into the heart, cauterizing the wound. No blood on the killer, no mess. But who had access to the fire?" Jules nods, but Poirot continues. "More important, the notebook. The ink is fresh, written after the murder to frighten us. The killer wants us terrified and divided." Suddenly, Lady Evelyn bursts back in, her face ashen. "I found this in my room, slipped under the door." She holds a small vellum card with one word in red, "Next." Poirot takes it, sniffs the paper. It scent familiar. He pockets it and says to Jules, "Guard the body. I go alone now." He slips into the darkened corridors, the chateau a labyrinth of staircases and secret passages. His flashlight beam dances on portraits of long-dead Valois ancestors. Every shadow hides a threat. In the billiard room, he finds the first clue, a half-smoked Turkish cigarette on the floor, not Armand's brand. He pockets it, then hears footsteps, soft, deliberate, behind him. He whirls, but the corridor is empty except for a faint whisper drifting from the vent above. "Sleep little, detective. The night is young." Back in the library, the group regathers. No one has found anything, but tension crackles like lightning. Duval accuses the spies accuse the cardinal prays aloud. Poirot returns and holds up the cigarette. "Mes amis, someone here smokes Turkish Black Sea blend, rare outside Istanbul, and someone just tried to follow me." Eyes dart suspiciously, then the lights flicker again. Not the storm this time, a deliberate cut. In the darkness, someone screams, and when lanterns relight, Lady Evelyn Hart slumps in her chair, a thin red line across her throat, the same stiletto dagger now beside her hand, warm to the touch. Poirot kneels and sees the card pinned to her dress with one word in red: whisper. The checkmark beside her name now appears in the notebook, fresh ink still wet. 2 down, 13 to go, and Poirot notices something chilling on Evelyn's hand, clutching a torn scrap of fabric, deep green velvet, the exact color of Inspector Jules Poirot's smoking jacket. Jules stammers, "Hercule, I swear, Poirot silences him with a look. The game deepens, mon ami. The storm roars and the clock strikes 3. Chapter 3 coming next, where the walls themselves start to bleed.
Chapter 3. The walls begin to bleed. 3:15 in the morning, and the cold inside Chateau Mont Noir has become something alive. Frost crawls across the inside of the windows, and every breath turns white in the lantern light. The remaining guests stand in a frightened half-circle around the body of Lady Evelyn Hart, while Poirot studies the torn scrap of deep green velvet he found clutched in her dead hand. The color is unmistakable. It is the exact shade of Inspector Jules Poirot's smoking jacket. Jules spreads his hands helplessly. "Hercule, I was standing beside you when she died." Poirot nods once. "Precisely, mon ami. Someone wishes us to doubt you. The oldest trick in the book. Divide the sheep so the wolf may feed." He slips the scrap into his pocket and faces the others. From this moment no one moves alone. Never pairs, always threes. The Whisper Network wants panic. We deny them panic. The young Spanish diplomat, Carlos Vega, lights another cigarette with fingers that will not stop shaking. The elderly Countess Olga Romanoff clutches her rosary until the beads threaten to snap. Even the rival spies, Major Kessler and Colonel Dragomir, have stopped glaring at each other long enough to look afraid. Poirot orders both bodies carried down to the ice-cold wine cellar for safekeeping. As the grim little procession descends the stone stairs, a low, wet moan rises from inside the walls themselves. Everyone stops. The moan comes again, longer, more desperate, almost human. The Countess whispers in Russian that the house itself is dying. Back in the library, Poirot kneels at the fireplace. His small, neat fingers trace the carved marble until he finds a hairline seam. A panel slides open, revealing a narrow shaft dropping straight down into darkness. Cold air rushes up, carrying the sweet copper reek of fresh blood. He shines his torch. The stone sides of the old laundry chute glisten dark red. Blood is still dripping slowly from above. Someone has poured buckets down the heart of the house, Poirot says quietly. Theatrical. Effective. The network enjoys its little horrors. They seal the panel and return to an even greater horror. On the wall above Armand Valois' portrait, a perfect circle has been painted in blood. 13 lines radiate outward like the rays of a black sun, and at the end of each ray a single initial. A and E are already crossed through in fresh crimson. The remaining 11 spell the names of everyone still breathing, including the final P that stands for Poirot. The Countess screams and faints into Vega's arms. Kessler draws his Luger. Dragomir answers with his own pistol. For one dangerous second, the library threatens to become a shooting gallery. Poirot steps between the guns, his voice sharp as broken glass. "Lower those weapons instantly! You fire and the killer wins without lifting another finger." He turns to the bloody son. "Notice, please, the circle is incomplete. There is space for a 14th ray, perhaps for the leader himself when the list is finished." He dips a finger in the blood and smells it. Pig, mixed with anticoagulant. Stage blood. It is meant to terrify. It will not terrify Hercule Poirot. Yet even as he speaks, he feels ice that has nothing to do with the storm. Beneath the circle, tiny words have been scratched into the wet plaster. He produces his magnifying glass and reads aloud, only to himself. "The little Belgian will be last.
and he will beg. Jules notices the flicker across his friend's face. What is it, Hercule? Poirot folds the glass away. Nothing yet, mon ami. Only confirmation that this killer nurses an old grudge. We search the bedrooms now, all of us, together. No corner remains private tonight. Lantern swinging, they climb the grand staircase. Shadows leap across ancestral portraits like mocking ghosts. On the landing they find the overturned crystal vase and the buckets and the severed boar's head staring at them with filmed eyes. Crude, but it served its purpose. Room after room yields nothing until they reach the Countess's suite. The door stands open. Inside, chaos. Gowns slashed, jewels scattered across the floor like fallen stars. On the canopied bed lies one spotless white kid glove pinned to the pillow by the familiar stiletto. A fresh vellum card reads, "Old woman next." The Countess collapses in hysterics. They carry her to another room and post Vega and Kessler at the door with strict orders to shoot only if the door itself tries to open from the inside. Poirot remains behind alone for a moment. He lifts the glove. Left hand, delicate. Yet every woman in the house wears evening gloves 2 inches longer. This one is new, too new. He brings it to his nose. Beneath the scent of kid leather lingers the faint sweetness of Turkish Black Sea tobacco, the same brand as the half-smoked cigarette in the billiard room. The gray cells spark and catch fire. He returns to the corridor where the others wait like condemned prisoners. My friends, I now understand how the murders are committed. The who will follow very soon. But first, we must survive until sunrise, because the next whisper is already sliding through the walls, and it carries the Countess's name. Far below, in the black aisles of the wine cellar, one of the lanterns suddenly gutters and goes out. In the new darkness, soft footsteps move between the racks. Steel whispers against silk as a blade is wiped clean. The clock strikes 4.
Chapter 4. The Trap in the Mirror Gallery. 4:30 in the morning, and the chateau feels like a tomb, breathing cold around them. Poirot gathers the 11 survivors in the long mirror gallery on the 2nd floor. 100 reflections stare back from every wall, making it seem as though a silent army watches their every move. The storm outside has quieted to an evil whisper against the windows. Poirot stands beneath the central chandelier, small and immaculate, hands clasped behind his back. "My friends," he says, "the killer believes we are sheep. Tonight, we become wolves." He explains the plan with calm precision. The Countess is the bait. She will pretend to be alone and helpless in her new bedroom. But every door and corridor will be watched. The moment the killer moves, we close the net. Major Kessler scowls. And if the killer simply whispers through the walls again and cuts her throat from inside a locked room? Poirot smiles thinly. Then the little grey cells have already failed, and we all deserve to die. But I do not think it will come to that. The killer grows impatient. Impatience breeds mistakes. They move quickly. The Countess is carried half-fainting to the Rose Suite at the end of the east wing. A dummy made of pillows and her fur coat is placed in her bed, face hidden beneath the sheets. The real Countess is hidden in the adjoining dressing room with Jules and his revolver. Poirot stations the others in pairs along the corridor, behind statues, inside alcoves, anywhere shadows swallow light. He himself takes the most dangerous position, inside the Rose Suite, pressed flat against the wall beside the door, motionless as a tailor's dummy in his black overcoat. Silence falls heavier than the snow outside. Minutes crawl. Then it begins. A soft scrape from the servant's passage behind the tapestry. A breath held too long. The faint metallic click of a latch giving way. The tapestry bulges inward. A gloved hand appears, then an arm in black silk. The figure slips into the room like smoke, face hidden beneath a featureless white mask. In the right hand, the stiletto gleams, already warm from the fire downstairs. The killer moves to the bed and raises the blade for the downward strike. Poirot's voice cuts the darkness like a whip. "Now!" Every lantern flares at once. Doors burst open. Kessler and Gragomir lunge from opposite sides. Vega slams the main door shut and throws the bolt. The masked figure spins, cat-quick, and hurls the dagger straight at Poirot's heart. Poirot does not flinch. He simply steps aside. The blade buries itself in the wooden panel exactly where his chest had been a heartbeat earlier. Before the killer can draw a second weapon, Kessler and Dragomir crash into him like twin avalanches. The mask is torn away. The face beneath is not one any of them expected. It is Armand Valois, the billionaire host who supposedly died first, eyes wide, mouth twisted in fury. Valois snarls in perfect French. "You should have minded your own business, little Belgian." For a stunned second, the gallery is silent. Then Valois laughs, a short, ugly bark. "You still do not understand, do you? I never died. The body in the wine cellar belongs to my double, a penniless cousin who looked enough like me to fool even my own mother. A warm dagger, pig's blood in the veins, a pulse already stopped by poison hours earlier. Simple theatre." Poirot's eyes glitter. "And the Whisper Network?" Valois shrugs. "I am the Whisper Network. Always was. 15 greedy fools who thought they could blackmail me with my own ledgers. I invited them here to remove them one by one and pin the blame on shadows. You were never meant to be on the list, Poirot. You were the perfect witness. The great detective who would declare every death impossible, therefore accidental or suicide. The world would have believed you." He glances at the stiletto quivering in the wood. "But you refuse to be useful." Jules steps forward, revolver steady. "It is finished, Armand. The telephones are dead, but the storm lifts at dawn. A ski patrol will reach us by noon." Valois smiles again, almost gently. "Is it finished?" He lifts his left hand. In it is a small glass vial filled with colorless liquid. One drop in the water cistern, and every soul in this house sleeps forever, including mine. I always preferred a clean stage. Poirot takes one calm step forward. "You will not use it." Valois raises an eyebrow. "And why not?" "Because, mon ami," says Poirot, "the cistern was emptied and refilled with wine an hour ago, on my orders. Your poison is already swimming happily inside a 1904 Chateau d'Yquem. A terrible waste, but necessary." Valois stares. For the first time, real fear across his face. Kessler twists his arm higher. Dragomir snaps on handcuffs taken from his own luggage. Poirot walks to the window and pulls back the heavy curtain. Far below, the first pale line of dawn touches the mountain peaks. The storm is over. He turns back to the man who tried to kill them all. "You built a perfect machine of murder, Monsieur Valois, but you forgot one thing. Even the cleverest machine breaks when one tiny spring is removed." He reaches into his pocket and produces the spotless white kid glove from the Countess's pillow. This spring, for example. A left-handed glove worn by a right-handed man. Your only mistake. Valois lunges against the cuffs, snarling like an animal. Poirot merely adjusts his mustache and walks away. Behind him, the mirror gallery fills with 100 reflections of a small, triumphant Belgian leading a murderer into the morning light. The clock strikes 5. Chapter 5 coming next, where the final name on the list receives its checkmark after all. but not the way anyone expected. Chapter 5. The Last Checkmark. Dawn finally claws its way over the peaks, and pale light floods the mirror gallery. Armand Valois sits handcuffed to a heavy Louis XIV chair, his face gray with rage and defeat. The remaining guests stand in a loose circle, too exhausted to cheer, too stunned to speak. Snow has stopped falling, and somewhere far below, they can hear the faint crunch of approaching ski patrols. Poirot walks slowly along the mirrored walls, studying every reflection as though looking for something still hidden. His shoes make no sound on the parquet. At last, he stops in front of Valois and speaks, almost kindly. "You told us a beautiful story, Monsieur Valois. A double in the library, a warm dagger, pig blood, a perfect performance. Yet one detail refuses to lie down and sleep." He produces the leather notebook, the one found beside the fake body. Valois' eyes flicker. Poirot opens it to the list of 15 names. 14 have neat check marks in red ink. The 15th, Hercule Poirot, has none. "You said I was never meant to die, only to be the witness. Then why is my name on your list at all? Why write it if you intended to spare me?" Valois shrugs. Theatrical flourish, nothing more. Poirot shakes his head slowly. No. A man who plans 14 murders does not add meaningless names. Every stroke of your pen had purpose. He flips the page. On the back, someone has drawn a tiny, precise floor plan of the chateau with arrows and timings. At the bottom, a single line in the same red ink. "Finish the Belgian last, so he sees everything." Valois' jaw tightens. Poirot closes the notebook gently. "You see, my friends, the performance in the Rose Suite was brilliant, but it was not the final act. It was the diversion." He turns to the others. "While we all watched the mirror gallery, the real killer was completing the real list." A terrible silence falls. Jules steps forward, revolver rising. "Hercule, what are you saying?" "I am saying that Armand Valois is exactly who he claims to be. He is the mastermind, but he is not alone. The Whisper Network always works in pairs, one to be seen, one to never be seen." Poirot spins suddenly and points at the far end of the gallery where the elderly Countess Olga Romanov stands, wrapped in a sable coat, tears still wet on her cheeks. "You, madame, step forward." The Countess freezes. Her rosary slips from her fingers and clatters across the floor. Valois begins to laugh, a low, ugly sound. The Countess's voice is suddenly steady, no trace of the broken old woman. "You have no proof, little man." Poirot smiles without warmth. "On the contrary, I have everything." He holds up the spotless white kid glove. Left-handed glove for a woman who lost her left arm in the Russo-Japanese War and wears a porcelain hand beneath her sleeve. A glove you planted yourself to make us look elsewhere. Next, he produces the half-smoked Turkish cigarette. Black Sea blend, smoked only by white Russian émigrés who served in the old imperial court, exactly like you, Countess. Then the torn scrap of green velvet. "I took the liberty of examining your luggage, madam. Inside your jewel case, I found the matching jacket with one corner freshly torn away. You brushed against Lady Evelyn in the dark, and she ripped it free as she died." The Countess's face changes. The frightened old woman melts away.
replaced by something cold and ancient and merciless. Valois stops laughing. "Olga, no!" She ignores him. Her right hand dips into her sable muff and comes out holding a tiny pearl-handled derringer. Jules shouts and raises his revolver, but Poirot lifts one finger. Wheat. The Countess looks straight at Valois with pure contempt. "You were always weak, Armand. You wanted drama, applause. I wanted silence. 15 names, 15 debts from the old world paid in blood. You were useful until you began to enjoy the spotlight." Valois strains against the cuffs. "We were partners." "We were never partners until you decided to spare the Belgian for your vanity. A witness, you said. I say no witnesses." She turns the derringer toward Poirot. "Goodbye, little detective." The shot is deafening in the enclosed gallery. But the Countess staggers. The derringer falls from her fingers. A perfect red hole blooms in the center of her forehead. Behind her, Major Kessler lowers his smoking Luger, his face expressionless. "I owed the Romanovs a debt from 1918, he says quietly. "Tonight, the debt is paid." The Countess crumples like an empty dress. For a long moment, no one moves. Poirot walks to the body, kneels, and gently closes the staring eyes. He opens the notebook to the list of names, and with his own pen draws one final check mark beside the very last entry. Hercule Poirot. He closes the book and stands. "Now, mes amis, the list is complete. The Whisper Network is finished." Sunlight pours through the tall windows, turning every mirror into blazing gold. Far below, the ski patrol reaches the front doors, their voices rising in cheerful French. Poirot adjusts his mustache, looks once more at his 100 triumphant reflections, and allows himself the smallest of a smile. Order is restored. The little gray cells have prevailed. And somewhere in the walls, the final whisper dies forever. The clock strikes 6, and the chateau breathes out as though it has been holding its breath for 100 years. Epilogue, coming next.
Chapter 6. Epilogue. The Conversation in the Snow. 2 days later, the chateau is empty of police and reporters. The bodies have been carried down the mountain on sledges. The broken mirrors have been covered with sheets. Only Hercule Poirot remains, standing alone on the wide terrace, wrapped in his enormous fur coat, watching fresh snow erase the last footprints of the nightmare. A crunch behind him. He does not turn. He knows the rhythm of those footsteps. Inspector Jules Poirot stops beside him, blowing on his hands. "The Swiss authorities are satisfied, Hercule. Valois and the Countess Romanov, joint leaders of the Whisper Network. 14 intended victims. 2 killers dead. Case closed. They are calling you a hero again." Poirot gives a soft snort. "Heroes are for newspapers, mon ami. I prefer the truth." Jules hesitates. "Then tell me the truth. How long did you know there were 2? Poirot gazes at the white peaks. "From the moment I touched the first dagger and found it warm. One mind plans with ice, another kills with fire. Only 2 people could move so perfectly together, yet hate each other so completely. Valois needed admiration. The Countess needed annihilation. Classic marriage of convenience." Jules shakes his head. "And the checkmark beside your own name?" Poirot reaches into his pocket and draws out the leather notebook. He opens it to the last page. The list is there. 15 names, 15 red check marks. But the ink of the final mark, his own, is slightly darker, slightly fresher. I edited it myself the morning after the Countess fell. A small vanity, perhaps. I wished the network to die believing it had completed its work. Ghosts rest easier when they think they have won. Jules stares at him. You let the world believe you were marked for death? Only the dead believed it. The living needed a cleaner story. Two monsters destroyed each other while the great Poirot survived untouched. It is tidy. People sleep better with tidy. He tosses the notebook into the blazing brazier on the terrace. The leather curls, the pages blacken, the red check marks vanish into smoke. Jules watches the flames. Will there ever be another Whisper network? Poirot considers. There will always be those who kill with whispers, but never again this one. I have burned its name. A cold wind rises, carrying the smoke high above the Alps. For a moment the two men stand in silence, two small figures against the vast white silence of the mountains. Then Poirot turns up his collar. Come, Jules, the funicular leaves in 20 minutes. London is warm this time of year, and I have promised Hastings a proper Christmas dinner. He has been worrying again. Jules smiles. He always worries. That is why I keep him. They walk together down the snow-covered steps. Behind them the chateau doors close with a soft, final thud. Snow begins to fall again, gentle and forgiving, covering every trace of blood, every echo of screams, every last whisper. By the time the funicular reaches the valley, the peaks are clean and bright under a new sun. And somewhere far below, in the tidy streets of Lausanne, a small Belgian with magnificent mustaches steps onto the Paris train, humming a little tune under his breath. The Whisper network is dead. Order is restored. The little gray cells are, as always, content.
Chapter 7. The Letter That Arrived Too Late. 3 weeks after Poirot returned to London, a plain envelope bearing a Swiss postmark was delivered to his flat in Whitehaven Mansions. No return address, only his name written in elegant sloping ink that seemed familiar. Inside lay a single sheet of heavy cream paper and a small photograph. Poirot sat in his favorite armchair beside the hissing gas fire and read the brief message twice before the words truly settled. My dear Monsieur Poirot, you burned the wrong notebook. The real list was never leather, it was flesh. 15 names carved into living skin across Europe over 20 years. 14 are now scars. The 15th is yours. The network does not die with its leaders. It only changes its voice. Enjoy your Christmas dinner. The next whisper will come when the snow falls again. With admiration, O. Poirot turned the photograph over. It showed the inner forearm of a woman. Delicate white skin marked with 15 tiny neat check marks in faded red scar tissue. The last mark was fresh and still healing, shaped unmistakably like a perfect P. For a long time the little detective sat motionless, while the fire popped and Hastings clattered teacups in the kitchen. Outside, London lay under thin January sleet. When Hastings finally entered carrying the tray, he found Poirot standing at the window staring down into the gray street. The letter and photograph had already vanished into the flames. "Everything all right, old chap?" Hastings asked. Poirot smoothed his mustache and gave the smallest of smiles. "Perfectly, mon ami.
Merely an invitation to dinner from an old acquaintance. I believe I shall decline." He turned away from the window. "Tell me, Hastings, do you think the Alps are pleasant in February?" Hastings blinked. "Cold as charity, I should think. Why?" Poirot's eyes gleamed. "Because I have decided to take a little holiday. Alone. There is a small matter of unfinished business high in the mountains. A whisper that still believes it has the last word." He reached for his heavy overcoat. "Pack warmly, Captain. The snow is coming early this year." And somewhere far above the clouds, in a lonely sanatorium overlooking the same peaks that once guarded Chateau Mongenor, a woman with one porcelain hand sat by her window, tracing the newest scar on her arm and smiling at the storm that was already gathering again. The game, it seemed, had only just begun.
Chapter 8. The Snowbound Train. February 14th, 1938. The Simplon Orient Express crawls southward through a white hell somewhere between Lausanne and Milan. For 12 hours, the blizzard has hammered the train until every window is a blank wall of ice. The locomotive has given up. The dining car is dark. The passengers have been locked inside the single sleeping car like sardines in a frozen tin. 12 strangers in 12 compartments, plus one conductor who has not been seen since midnight. Hercule Poirot sits alone in compartment 7, immaculate as always, reading a slim volume of Baudelaire by the dim blue emergency lamp. His small overnight case rests on the rack above. Inside the case, wrapped in black silk, lies the pearl-handled derringer he took from the Countess Romanov's dead fingers. He has not slept. At exactly 3:03 a.m., the lights flicker once and die completely. A woman screams 2 compartments away. When the emergency lamps glow again 30 seconds later, the door to compartment 3 stands open. Inside, a young Austrian countess named Ilse von Hoffmann lies across her berth with a single red check mark carved neatly into her throat. No weapon, no footprints in the narrow corridor. Every compartment door was locked from the inside. The train is still sealed under 20 feet of snow. The 11 remaining passengers gather in the swaying corridor wrapped in blankets and suspicion. There is a famous Italian tenor, a nervous English governess, a silent Orthodox monk, a glamorous Hungarian widow wearing too much perfume, a Swiss banker with a bandaged hand, twin Dutch diamond merchants who finish each other's sentences, an American oil heiress traveling with her maid, a French archaeologist carrying a locked mummy case, and a pale young man who claims to be a journalist but never takes notes. Poirot steps into the center, raises one small hand, and the panic quietens. "Mesdames et messieurs," he says calmly, "we are prisoners of the snow with a murderer who kills by timetable. The next death is announced for dawn, unless Hercule Poirot prevents it." The Hungarian widow laughs too loudly. "And how will you do that, little man? There is no way in or out." Poirot smiles without warmth. "There is always a way, madame. The network has merely become more intimate." He orders every passenger to empty pockets and luggage in the tiny salon at the end of the car. Jewelry, passports, lipstick, rosaries, morphine vials, love letters, a miniature Egyptian scarab, a set of lockpicks, and one slim stiletto with the blade still warm spill across the table. The American heiress gasps, "That is my nail file." Poirot lifts the stiletto. "Then your nail file is very sharp, mademoiselle, and it has tasted blood tonight." While the others argue,
Poirot notices the Orthodox monk standing slightly apart. The man's beard is perfect, his robes immaculate, yet something is wrong. The hands are too smooth, the eyes too bright. He steps closer and sniffs discreetly. Beneath incense and candle wax, he catches the faintest trace of the same Turkish black seed tobacco that haunted Chateau Monnois. He says nothing yet. At 4:17 a.m., the lights fail again. Another scream. When illumination returns, the French archaeologist sits bolt upright in his seat with the same red check mark across his throat. The mummy case beside him is open and empty. The salon dissolves into chaos. The Dutch twins try to break a window and are restrained. The tenor begins to sing an aria of pure terror. Poirot claps his hands once, sharp as a gunshot. Enough. 2 murders in locked compartments on a motionless train. The method is elegant, yes, but not impossible. He turns to the conductor's compartment at the very front of the car, still sealed. We open it now. They break the lock with a fire axe. Inside, they find the conductor bound, gagged, and very much alive, eyes wide open with horror. On the wall above him, someone has painted in blood a perfect circle with 12 rays. 2 are already crossed out. The conductor tears free from the gag and whispers one word before fainting. Olga. The Hungarian widow turns pale beneath her rouge. Poirot faces the passengers. The Countess Romanoff did not die in the chateau. The woman Major Kessler shot wore parcel in hand, yes, but the wrong hand. A substitute. The real Countess has been traveling ahead of me for weeks, preparing the next stage. She is here, now. Every face turns to every other face. Poirot raises the warm stiletto. And she will kill again at sunrise unless we give her a better target. He smiles the small, dangerous smile that Hastings would recognize in an instant. Fortunately, he says, Hercule Poirot has always been excellent bait. Outside, the blizzard howls like a living thing, and inside the sleeping car, the temperature begins to fall even further. The clock ticks towards dawn.
Chapter 9. Sunrise on the Glacier. 5:45 in the morning, and the train remains a frozen coffin buried beneath the avalanche. No rescue snowplow has reached them. The air inside the sleeping car is so cold that every word leaves a ghost of frost. 10 passengers huddled together in the salon, under blankets and suspicion, while Poirot stands alone at the window, watching the first sickly glow of sunrise stain the snowfields blood red. The Countess has not struck again. She is waiting for the light, Poirot murmurs to himself. She always preferred a beautiful stage. He turns to the others. Mesdames and Messieurs, in 15 minutes the sun will clear the ridge. At that exact moment the killer will come for me. I ask only one thing. Remain exactly where you are. Do not move, do not speak, do not interfere. The curtain is about to rise. He walks calmly down the corridor to his own compartment, leaves the door wide open, and sits on the lower berth facing the entrance. In his lap rests the pearl-handled derringer. He does not load it. Minutes bleed away. At 5:59, the emergency lamps flicker and die for the last time. The car is plunged into absolute darkness, lit only by the ghastly red glow filtering through ice-crusted windows. Silence. Then the softest scrape of metal on metal. The door to the luggage van at the rear of the car eases open. A figure steps through, wrapped head to foot in white furs, face hidden behind a silk ski mask the color of fresh snow. In the right hand glints the familiar stiletto. In the left,
a small silver whistle. The figure raises the whistle to its lips and blows one silent note. Somewhere inside the walls of the carriage, an answering click sounds, a hidden panel sliding open. The Countess Olga Romanov steps into the red half-light and pulls the mask away. Her face is exactly as Poirot remembers, ancient, beautiful, merciless. The porcelain hand is now the right one. The left is gloved in spotless white kid. "You kept me waiting, little Belgian," she says softly. "I do dislike tardiness." Poirot inclines his head. "And I dislike unnecessary deaths, madame. 2 tonight is already excessive." She smiles. "Only 2? The list has grown since the chateau. Every passenger in this car owes me a life. But you I saved for sunrise, a gift." She advances slowly, blade rising. Poirot does not move. "Tell me one thing before the gift is opened. How did you survive the mirror gallery?" "Child's play. The woman Kessler shot was my maid, dressed in my clothes, wearing my porcelain hand on the wrong arm. She begged to take the bullet. Loyalty is such a rare commodity." "And the scars on your arm?" "A reminder. Every checkmark a Romanov treasure your precious Europe stole from my family. Tonight, the debt is settled." She is 3 steps away. Poirot lifts the empty derringer and points it at her heart. "Then settle this last debt with me alone. Let the others live." The Countess laughs, low and musical. "You still believe in mercy? How quaint." She lunges. At the same instant, every light in the sleeping car blazes on at full strength. The hidden panel behind Poirot bursts open, and 6 Swiss mountain guides in white camouflage pour into the compartment, rifles leveled. From the corridor, the 10 passengers appear, no longer frightened, no longer shivering victims, but grim-faced men and women holding revolvers and handcuffs. The Countess freezes, blade raised. Poirot rises slowly. "You see, madame, I too can change my voice. The avalanche was real, but the rescue plow reached us 4 hours ago. These good people are not passengers. They are agents of the Sûreté, Interpol, and the Swiss Federal Police. Even the conductor is one of ours." He gestures, and the Orthodox monk steps forward, pulls away the false beard, and reveals himself as Chief Inspector Jules Perrot. The Countess's eyes blaze. "You tricked me." "No," Poirot says gently. "You tricked yourself. You believed I would travel alone. I never travel alone when the snow falls." Steel cuffs snap around her wrists. The porcelain hand falls to the floor and shatters like ice. As she leads him away, she turns for one last look at Poirot. "The list is longer than you know, little Belgian. The network has many voices." Poirot meets her gaze without blinking. "Then I shall silence them all, one by one, until even the wind forgets the tune." At that moment, the sun clears the ridge, flooding the carriage with pure white light. Outside, the snowplows roar closer, throwing glittering clouds into the air. Poirot watches the Countess disappear between the guides, then turns to Jules with a small, tired smile. "Tell them to serve coffee, mon ami. Real coffee. The nightmare is over." But even as the others cheer and embrace, Poirot's eyes linger on the shattered porcelain hand lying on the carpet. Among the fragments, he notices something he did not expect: a thin roll of paper tucked inside the hollow wrist. He unfolds it carefully. 15 fresh names in tiny, perfect handwriting. The first 14 already bear delicate red check marks. The 15th is blank. At the bottom, a single line. See you next winter. O. Poirot folds the paper, slips it into his waistcoat pocket, and allows himself the very smallest of a sigh. The train lurches forward at last, chains clanking, whistles screaming triumph into the morning. Somewhere far ahead, the tracks stretch south towards sunlight and spring. But in Poirot's pocket, the new list waits patiently for the snow to fall again.
Chapter 10. The Last Whisper. Whitehaven Mansions, London, Christmas Eve, 1938. Snow falls thick and silent over London, muffling even the bells of St. Paul's. Hercule Poirot sits alone by a modest fire, a single lamp burning, the rest of the flat in darkness. On the low table before him lie 3 objects: the roll of paper taken from the porcelain hand on the train, a second, older roll, yellowed and brittle, found hidden inside the lining of the Countess Romanoff's traveling trunk after her arrest, and a plain white envelope delivered by hand an hour ago. No stamp, no address, only the initial O in the familiar sloping hand. Poirot smooths the 2 lists side by side. The old list bears 30 names. 15 are crossed through in faded red. 15 remain unmarked. Every crossed name belongs to a person who died violently between 1919 and 1937, deaths the world called accident, suicide, or war. At the bottom, in the same hand that wrote the new list, a single line. Phase 1 complete. Phase 2 begins when the Belgian burns the wrong book. The new list is shorter. Only 15 names again. The first 14 already checked are the passengers who supposedly survived the snowbound train. The 15th name, still blank, is Hercule Poirot. Poirot opens the white envelope. Inside is a single playing card, the Queen of Spades, and a short note. You were never the final victim, little detective. You were the messenger. The network needed the world to believe it was destroyed twice, first in the chateau, then on the train, so that no one would ever look for it again. Every death you witnessed was theater. Every arrest was permitted. The Countess was never the leader. She was the curtain. Enjoy your Christmas. The real work begins in spring. With eternal admiration, the Voice. Poirot sits very still. The fire settles with a soft pop. He reaches for the older list, holds it to the flame, and watches the 30 names curl into black ash. Then he lifts the new list and studies the 14 checked names. He knows every face now. The Swiss banker with the bandaged hand, the American heiress, the Orthodox monk who was Yules in disguise, the Hungarian widow, the Italian tenor. All of them. They were never police. They were the network itself, performing for him, letting him believe he had won so that suspicion would die forever. The train, the avalanche, the sunrise arrest, everything was the final performance of Phase 2. Poirot looks at the empty 15th line beside his own name, and for the first time in his life, he laughs. A small, soft, almost wondering sound. So, he murmurs to the silent room, I have not been hunting the Whisper Network. The Whisper Network has been hunting belief in the Whisper Network, and tonight it has killed that belief perfectly.
He stands, walks to the window, and watches the snow blanket London in innocence. Somewhere out there, the 14 survivors have scattered across Europe, carrying new faces, new legends, new orders. The Countess will hang or disappear, it hardly matters. The voice has already moved on. Poirot raises his glass of tisane in a solitary salute. "You are magnificent," he says to the darkness. "But you made one mistake. You left the messenger alive." He returns to the table, opens a fresh notebook of his own, and writes a single line in neat green ink. Phase 3 begins when Hercule Poirot decides it begins. Then he closes the book, turns off the lamp, and sits in the glow of the dying fire, while the snow falls and falls, covering every trace of every whisper the world will never hear again. Outside, London sleeps, believing itself safe. Inside, the little Belgian with the magnificent mustache begins to plan. The network thinks the game is over. Hercule Poirot knows it has only moved to a larger board. And this time, there will be no audience, no curtain, no applause. Only silence. The final, perfect silence that only Poirot can bring. The end. Until the snow falls again.